everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and together we are ThinkerThemer, and today we're doing a different type of video. We've been a little bit reflective lately, and we've been thinking about our most anticipated games of 2023.
Yes, and how they kind of matched our expectations, because now we've had a chance to play quite a lot of them. I'd say pretty much the majority of
Most of them,
yeah, bar a couple. So yeah, we're keen to then compare which were the hits, which were the misses, which are the ones that were like, yeah, okay, kind of in between. So this is what this video is all about.
Because when we make anticipated videos, we know just as much as you do. We can look on BGG, we can look at some early rule books and things, but really you never know how a game is going to hit until it gets to the table, until you get to experience it with your friends and family. So we have some thoughts on these games, and coincidentally, our most anticipated games of 2023, we just hit 23,000 subscribers on the channel. So thank you everybody so much for watching. And now let's get into our list. So we're going to cover the games in the same way we did last time. We're going to go from 10 to 1, but we're not going to talk too much about the games, just what we expected and then the experience of it and what's happened since. So the first game that was number 10 on my list was a roll and write called Motor City. This is the third game in a series of games by the same designers. There was Fleet the Dice game, and then Three Sisters, then this one, and actually there's been a fourth called The Fourth Quarter, which we haven't played. But Motor City we did back, and I backed it because of all the anticipation, because I love the other two. Probably Fleet the Dice. I like both of them. Three Sisters and Fleet the Dice game, they're still in our collection.
I connect more with Three Sisters. I didn't really enjoy Fleet the Dice game. That wasn't really my thing. But you quite like it.
I just like the fishing theme. And I do like the car theme as well. So I thought Motor City would be an instant hit for me. It didn't hit as well as the other two. I think because it was a little bit more tricky to teach because of it was a bit more of cognitive overload, and also there were a lot more conditions in the game, and that you need to be able to do something. You need to do something in order to unlock another part of the player board, which I felt like improved as you played it more, but it wasn't that instant like, ooh, fun from the first play.
Very intuitive, and then that adds a little bit of like clunkiness as you're kind of trying to learn it. And then like even for me, like it wasn't on my list of the most anticipated, but even for me I was like, so I kind of struggled and I didn't sort of have the
so unfortunately this one didn't stay in our collection. I gave it, if you want to hear more about the game, I'll link to the 10 out of 10 where we covered it. But I ended up giving it a 6.9. So that's kind of at that level where it probably doesn't have a spot in our collection. So we've moved that one on.
So did not meet expectations?
Did not meet expectations. Well, but you know, that's a hard thing to say. That's quite harsh because because these games were featured in our most anticipated list, we have a lot of excitement around it.
It's a high bar for them.
It's a high bar. You could set them up to fail just because you're so excited. But as reviewers, we do try and push the hype aside and discriminate between what works for us and what doesn't, and as always, just because it doesn't work for us doesn't mean it's not going to work for you, so bear that in mind. But that was my number 10, Motor City.
So my number 10 was a game called Hickory Dickory. She always completes that, which I actually still haven't had a chance to play, even though there was an almost opportunity at the last Dice Star West.
I got to play your most anticipated number 10. I got to play,
so I'm still looking forward to it.
Ever since the last video, we did get an opportunity to play for Maggie the nursery rhyme Hickory Dickory Dock, and I have to say that fell below expectation. It doesn't really go anywhere. The mouse just goes up the clock and back down the clock.
The narrative arc of the nursery rhyme is very limited. I hope the game is better.
Well, look,
the gaming arc.
I did get an opportunity to play the game, and like normally, if it was so anticipated and I got a chance to play it, I'd probably buy it so I could teach it to Maggie. I'm just not sure you're going to like it,
and that's why I think I've hesitated to like rush to try and like get my hands on it, because as more playthroughs came out and reviews came, I was like, but we'll see. Like I still haven't really had a chance to. So.
Can I tell you why I think you won't like it? There's two reasons. I think the game has a timing element where you're pretty good with patience in games. You're very happy to put your worker away somewhere and wait.
Delay gratification.
You're fine with that, but in this game, it is quite punishing if you don't plan ahead many, many steps. And I feel like you're more instinctive as a player.
I'm more organic. I'm an organic kind of player.
So you might not like that because if you don't plan correctly, and I actually found it, I like to plan, and I found it quite hard to do that in this game because there is a bit of not randomness, but the other players knocking you off the
Yeah.
the hand clock when you've got your workers sitting on it.
I'm still looking forward to playing it. It's just...
Hold on, there's another one.
Oh, there's another
another
more.
reason.
Wait, there's more.
There's a very abstract puzzle that you're working on.
Yeah.
So,
I did see that element, yeah.
The whole purpose of moving your mice around are to pick up these little azul-like tiles and bring them back in your little bags, which are very cute, but play them out on a very abstract asymmetric puzzle.
Okay.
Not sure you're going to love the puzzle.
Yeah, okay.
But, you know, so I feel like this is a game I do want to teach you, but I don't know if I want to go out and buy. So maybe if we see someone else or another con.
We need to wait for another con or another gaming day where we get the chance to use someone else's copy. Yeah.
Exactly. But I've played it. Maggie hasn't.
All right.
Maggie's number 10.
So that's still,
still anticipated.
That's still anticipated to be finalized. That was my number 10, Hickory Dickory.
So you can see, I didn't say it. My number 9 is a game called Darwin's Journey. So I had been following along with this ever since the campaign, very excited about it. Simone Luciani, who I love as a designer. But this game, quite another one that didn't quite hit the heights that I wanted to. I think, I still gave it, I think, a 7.7 when we did rate it. So, it's a great game. But for me, it didn't really have an occasion. And what I mean by that is the setup and the explanation of this game almost is like too complex for the payoff of the game. And so if I wanted to play something that is that heavy or I don't know, there's something about this game that is almost a little bit too much for the teach that I want to give people, and then not enough from a tension perspective, which, yes, it's tense because it's worker placement, but there's still a lot of options available to you because there's so many components to the game. I will talk about a couple of things that I really loved about this game, and when I think about these elements, I really think that they shone through. The first is upgrading your workers using the different wax seals.
Yeah.
That's really cool because you're changing your workers' capability and then you have to think carefully about which worker you use for what action because some of them are going to be more powerful than others. I really like that. And the second element I really like is unlocking new worker placement spots. So actually paying to create new locations for workers. I really liked that as well. But the times that I got this to the table and went through the whole teachers, which is quite a long teach, I just felt like everybody around the table wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to play that again. I didn't get that kind of level. It's like, oh yeah, that was fun and enjoyable. But, it takes up a lot of space, these big Euros, these big deluxe editions. And I did love the componentry. But yeah, for some reason,
I agree. Like, I enjoy my time with it, but it's quite an investment to set up, take down, to teach. And it's one of those games that you play the first game and you're like, oh, okay, I think now I know what I would try next time. So it's like, it also then, you'd have to kind of play it multiple times. So I agree. Like, I really enjoyed several elements of it. But I think ultimately, it didn't really it didn't wow me. It was like, but it was a solid, solid game experience.
It was a solid Euro from last year.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. But it probably won't stay in our collection. It's still in our collection actually, but this is one we'll probably move on. Okay. So that was my number 9, Darwin's Journey. And then in the previous video, we actually skipped Maggie's number 9 because it was higher on my list. So we'll do that here.
Yeah.
And my number 8 was My Island. Now, My Island, Reina Knizia puzzle game, lots of those around. But this game is a legacy game where you all have, your different puzzles and you're unlocking those envelopes and building up and progressing through the game. It is the follow-up to the game My City. And we had the exact same experience with My Island that we have with My City. So this is how it happens. Extreme excitement. Me, my sister, and Maggie sit down and we play multiple games of this and we're powering through, and we're enjoying ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we get to kind of halfway through and the excitement has died down a little bit. It's plateaued.
Where you're like, I'm still in this island. How many days have I been here? And I'm like, surely we're probably only like a couple hours left. And it's like, no, there's still way more content. I'm like, what? But I feel like I'm doing the same thing over and over and over.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so a couple of things happen. I think our game sessions get more and more stretched out because no one's as excited as they were to get it to the table. And so then we forget a little bit about, where were we up to and what was the rules and which rules followed through, etc., etc. And then Maggie reveals that she's a little bit bored by the mechanics of the game. And my sister and I are like, well, we'd like to continue playing. And ultimately, we have still not finished My City or My Island. And it's a real shame because there's a lot to like about these games. I quite like them. I don't get as bored by the repetition of the same mechanic as Maggie does. I think Maggie wants to see more evolution.
Yeah.
But I do wish that there were more substantial changes that made a bit more thematic sense and that they built on each other because they kind of build, but they go on these random tangents and then all of a sudden that element's taken out of the game again. And it's, I don't know, there's something about...
Yeah. It feels very like the little kind of module that comes in and so it does this thing. It just, I feel like for me, it never felt compelling. Like, ooh, this is a completely new thing. So that part of me that wants variety and seeks that sort of, a new experience, a discovery of some sort, doesn't really get the payoff. I agree that I enjoyed like the first few gaming sessions where we're like, trying to work out the puzzle and getting better at it. But then I hit a point where I'm like, I kind of want a new experience. And I never, those little things that came in didn't quite hit that.
And that's such a barrier in our household. So I'm going to blame Maggie for this one. I think I would have finished it actually.
Yeah,
but
probably would have. It was up to you and your sister.
Yeah, I don't mind it with a cup of tea. I feel like it's just, it's pretty relaxed. I really like that everybody is using the same pieces. And so there's that like competitive spirit about how you place it and what works out the best each round. I really enjoy that. So it's a bit hard because I think it's the perfect game experience and I would say go out and rush out and buy this, probably not. But am I enjoying my time with it? Yes. But I don't know, we haven't finished one of them. So that says something in and of itself. I'm like, why haven't we finished them?
I feel like I would have been fine with it if it had been a shorter experience. So it's like if it would be done by now, I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, that was good. I feel like it didn't overstay its time on the table. Now it has for me and my, ADHD seeking new experience type brain. So
I mean, we both are like that, but there are other games that we've played through to completion. And you've played hundreds of hours of some games, and like Mythwind, you've spent so many hours in, and we'll come back to that later. But so it's not that you don't have the staying power. It's just that this game is not drawing us back in the same way as those games. So anyway, that was my number 8, My Island. Would I play the next one in the series? Yeah, I probably would.
Yeah, and I'd try it. I'd try it. But I think now I'd go in knowing I'll probably be part of it for the first, 5 games of it. And then you're on your own.
Well, maybe my sister and I should just play the next one by ourselves.
You do that. You go. You have my blessing. So now my number 8 was a game called FLOE, which we've now covered a preview of because we had a prototype of it. It was my number 8, even though I knew very little about this game. All I knew was a little bit about the theme and what they were trying to create with this is sort of like adventure-like game, replicating some of those adventure-like video games where, you go on expeditions and you're discovering things and you're building things and you go on so I was like, that's all I kind of knew. And I also, this was one of those that as soon as I saw the cover, I was pretty much sold on the like Andrew Bosley cover of this cute, adorable creatures that are like really heroic and going on these like icy adventures, like icy land type adventures. I like saying that this game blew my expectations, like went way above my expectations is an understatement. I absolutely loved this game, and it's still like, obviously it's still under development, but the prototype and the version that I got to play, I just so connected with this. So much so that recently when we were at Dice Tower West, we brought the prototype because we knew that there'd be people who would want to play it. And I gladly sacrificed hours of my time that could have been like playing other stuff, playing new stuff, just to teach it to people because I wanted to get like people have that experience. I just, so this
also,
one.
you got to meet Johnny Pack and he was talking to you about some of the things that
some
they're
of the things that are changing and some of the things that are being like optimized and enhanced. So like, that was cool.
Yeah, look, this was not on on my most anticipated of 2023. And the reason for that is probably the reason that stopped a lot of people looking into FLOE in the initial stages is because, well, you know, two things. The art, Andrew Bosley art, and yes, he's put his art on other games that are quite crunchy, but it does have that like, oh, maybe it's just going to be a cute, cozy game that's not super difficult. And so for me, I was like, that brings it a bit lower on my estimation. And then, you know, a designer who I love, Henry Orderman, was at the center of this design, and he's wonderful, but also kind of in that like midway, you know, designer of parks. And so kind of those like more gateway friendly games. And so the combination of those two things, I thought maybe it's going to be a little bit light for my taste. No. It's not. I'm so happy to report that this game, and this is something that I'm kind of in the back of my mind, I'm a bit fearful that they might change something between the prototype.
Too much between now and when it delivers.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried that they might bring down the level of tension in the game because it's a race game, and in the first, you know, 3/4 of the game, it's really cruisy. You're collecting things, you're adventuring, you're equipping yourself with things, and it feels really light and fun. In that final quarter of the game, it is tense because you can see everyone racing towards those victory points, and you're trying to get up the resource tracks, and it is actually a delight because you are trying to optimize a lot of moves, and you need to optimize right from the beginning of the game. But the tension is really nice at the end of the game because I like a tense game experience, and I was super surprised that this delivered on that in spades. And I'm really excited to see what the legacy elements bring because there's going to be more unlockable content that we haven't seen. So this one wasn't even on my list. This was one of the ones on the list that Maggie correctly predicted, in my view, that it would be a game for us.
I couldn't have predicted how much I would connect with this. Like, it was just one of those, like, it looks cute and, like, you know, it looks interesting. It might be something that I'm like, oh, I assume it would be something. That's why it was sitting quite low, because I was like, I'm assuming it was something that I'm going to be like, oh, this was fun, this was cute, and that's it. Sort of like, no, I can spend hours and hours in this. So, there you go.
Can't wait to see the final version of that. So that was Maggie's number 8, FLOE. Now, my number 7 was another roll and write called Fliptown. And this one caught my eye mainly because of the designer, actually. Is the designer of Spiralopolis and this game that I love, Animal Kingdoms. Which is a game that, you know, people don't talk about very much, but I really enjoy. And so this came onto my radar when we were doing back chat and backed this game. And it's really interesting because at the center of it is a regular deck of cards. You're using a regular deck of cards, and every player's got the same 3 cards to essentially divide and conquer on their own worksheet from the roll and write style game. But one of the fun things, and the reason why I backed it, is because the card that you don't use, or the card that's left over out of the 3, goes towards a poker hand, and you're trying to make poker style runs and straights and flushes in order to make more points of money that you can use in the game. And so I just really enjoyed that concept, and it really delivers on that concept. It absolutely is what I expected from that perspective, and I really like that mechanically. I just think it's really clever to take a regular deck of cards and to turn it into this roll and write experience. I'm sure there's other ones that do that, but I really like the combination of that Western theme and the poker, so I really like that. But for some reason, I don't find it super fun. I think that this is another one where I just enjoy it for what it is. I enjoy it
academically, as we've said in the past.
As we say.
The concept of it.
Yeah, the concept of it. But it is quite, one, of course, roll and write. But this one feels particularly disconnected from the other players. Like, it's quite, I think this would be a much better game solo.
It was, I believe it was intended to be a solo game.
Yeah, and I got that sense from the player board as well. Yeah. Because it has spots for where you put the cards.
When you're by yourself.
When you're by yourself, but not when you're with other people.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of other elements that felt a little bit flatter for me. So there's like this bandit kind of region that you can go to, and you are trying to steal things, and you steal them by basically revealing a card. There's like a strong luck element to this particular part. There's also the sheriff, which has another luck element that you can mitigate as you go. But there's still a couple of like, let's just draw a card and see what happens. I found myself just completely ignoring that part of the board, which you probably shouldn't do because there are lots of nice synergies that you can experience in this game. Actually, I think that there's one part of the board, the township, and that reminds me a lot of like Fleet, the dice game, actually.
Yes, with the buildings that then give you other abilities and might unlock more permanent things.
Yeah, and I really like that element of the game and the way that starts to play out and giving you other free goodies. But for some reason, there wasn't anything in it that made me feel like, oh, this is like really, really new and this excites me and I want to keep playing it. So unfortunately, it's like, it's a nice game. It's a nice game, but yeah, as one of my most anticipated games, it probably, I don't know if it'll stay in our collection.
Yeah,
in terms of roll and writes.
Yeah, I didn't connect with it either. But some people have loved it. Like it's one of those, like it's a personal preference thing.
Yeah, lots of reviewers actually really love this game. So check it out if you do like roll and writes. I would say probably on reflecting on our journey into games. More reflecting. I wonder if I'm past my roll and write era.
Clutch pearls, gasp. Well, possibly. I feel like I kind of feel a little bit similarly. Like we went through the golden age.
I think everybody did
of roll and writes for a bit, and then it just sort of. Like I'm thinking of all those roll and writes, there's a couple that stand out that I still like really resonate with. But should I name them or is
well, there's going to be. I mean, we've done our top 10 roll and writes, and we have a lot of them still in our collection, and I'll gladly play them. But I feel like there's not a lot of new news coming out in roll and writes now. Like if there was something really innovative, I'd give it a go. But maybe we're all a little bit burnt out from roll and writes.
Maybe it just needs to have a little bit of a break, and then it could have another resurgence later.
Well, it was just like all of the deluxe and the miniatures and things that kind of came in a wave and then went away again. So I'm interested to see what era is coming next. What era is coming next? Does anybody know? Please drop it down in the comments.
I feel like the current thing seems to be trick taking. That's
been around.
That's
current. It's been happening.
Yeah. But I don't know what the next one is.
Japanese card games of all different types coming out. So there are a lot of card games, and I think that's reflective of they come down off all the deluxe massive boxes that are on our shelves, or in our case, sitting on our floor. Now people finding a lot of joy in smaller games, older games, smaller box games. So maybe that's what we're going to see a lot of in 2024. Anyway, we're not talking about 2024. We're talking about 2023. So back to the list. That was my number 7, Fliptown.
My number 7 was a game called Slay the Spire, which is actually based on a video game, where the video game is actually a card game. So it's a deck building card game where you're going through different, you're kind of choosing your own path, battling different foes or enemies to eventually have the ultimate boss battle.
Tell us all this time.
Tell us all this time, indeed. So it's a game that I still haven't played it. So it's only something that is I believe it's only just delivering now. So I don't really have much more. All I've seen is like, I've just been watching people's unboxings of it going, ooh.
But this is quite funny because Maggie said, hey, can you find out when this is delivering? And I said, oh, it's actually delivered in Australia. And she's like, I wonder where ours is. And I said, we didn't back it.
Like,
we didn't back it because I didn't find out that Maggie even liked the video game until well after the campaign for this.
Yeah.
So
sometimes I sort of feel like, sort of like, is that magical thinking where you go, oh, because I thought it, I'm sure it's going to happen? It's like, no. You actually have to communicate. Hey,
you do,
hey,
because
Amy, can you back this for me, please? It doesn't just.
I don't even know, were you aware of the game when it was being crowdfunded or it was after?
Oh, yeah. I was. And obviously in my mind, I'm like, great, I like it, so it's happening. But then we didn't actually.
No.
But actually, I've already seen that there's people in our gaming sort of circles that have a copy of it or have access to it. So it's going to be fine. I'm sure, I'm confident.
Melbourne friends, if you have a copy of this, please teach us and or send it us our way. No, don't send us your copy.
Yeah.
We'd love to play with you though. So we haven't yet played Slay the Spire number 7 for Maggie.
My number 6 is actually was Sleeping Gods Distant Skies. So it's the standalone sequel to Sleeping Gods, which I was really looking forward to because I really loved the world that Sleeping Gods had created, and it was in that same world. I loved the writing, so the writing style that was used. I always found it very evocative and just like, I just love that type of narrative. And this game promised to be a much more a streamline or improve on some of the mechanics and improve the flow. So I was like, okay, this all sounds good. And I feel like for me, it absolutely delivered. It actually became my number 3 top solo game of all time.
Of all time.
So this is probably one of the ones that just like was the biggest surprise, the darkest horse in this list, because it just went like right up.
And speaking of surprises, roll the tape. And I quite not love for the world of narrative.
Deep immersive narrative.
Whatever she said. So it's actually been our largest gap in scores on our regular series 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
So polarizing in this household.
Don't know if this is going to change your mind.
So you would have seen me shaking my head in agreement with Maggie that this would not change my mind about Sleeping Gods. However, it really did. And that's because Maggie did her top 10 solo games of all time, and I played all of them. And I was not looking forward to Sleeping Gods Distance, guys.
That's a nice way of saying you were dreading the time that you were going to have to sit down.
I was, because we played the first one cooperatively until I tapped out. And I was just like, you know what? I have seen enough.
Until I tapped, like halfway through the first game, you're like, I'm out. This is not for me.
There was a lot of narrative in the first game. And actually, even with the small amount that I played of the first one, I realized that the second one did make a lot of improvements. And when I played it solo, I got the opportunity to be the master of my own destiny in terms of looking after all the characters and deciding who was going to do what. I really loved in the booklet as well, the putting characters to different things.
Yeah, we need to allocate different, it's like one place, and then it's like allocate everyone to where they're going to go. Yeah.
And it felt like it was clear to me the amount of resource that I had. Like there was something about it that felt like it had a bit more tension and a bit more intention as well, rather than like I didn't feel as like wandering around. I felt like I had like clear how much can I get done in the amount of stuff that I have. Yeah. So I actually really liked it. I enjoyed my time with it. Is it something I want to continue playing through? No, it's not. It's not the style of game that I enjoy. But I was really surprised by it. Yeah,
as was I. You were like into it.
Yeah.
I remember sort of leaving you to it for a bit and then coming back, and you're like, oh, like I think I could even hear it from the other room going, oh yeah. Like, oh my goodness, she's liking it.
Yeah, and it wasn't too much story. So I felt like it probably does get more story intensive, but the little bits that it had, I felt like was just enough to keep the story going. And I thought it was really well written. Now that we've experienced a lot of narrative games, this one is particularly well
remains
written.
My favorite in terms of the writing style and how well written it is, and how like that's that world, the way it's created, the way that everything about it is just I find very compelling.
Yeah. Can I also just say, as an aside, a lot of people came up to me at Dice Tower West, a lot of solo gamers, to say thank you for playing games solo. And I just found that so wonderful about the solo gaming community. They didn't care that half of them didn't work for me. They were just like, thank you for giving it a go. You put yourself out of your comfort zone and played all these games that are really well loved solo. Yeah. And I did. And actually I surprised myself, because there were a lot of games that I was like, oh, I could see myself sitting down and playing this by myself. Yeah. I haven't done that since, but I could imagine a world where I would be doing that if I didn't have my wonderful wife to play games with.
So definitely. So this is my number 6 originally. Sleeping God Distance, guys. Definitely more than above expectations. Also love the new kind of combat system. Way more streamlined. I enjoy the cards. It's great stuff.
Now, my number 5 on the list and Maggie's number 9 was Through Ice and Snow, a game that we've been anticipating for quite a while now, waiting for it to deliver. But this is a game that apparently, we have not played it, but apparently it's super punishing, and we love that in a game. And I'm intrigued to learn more about the Inuit communities.
There's a lot of really great consultation that took place as part of informing and developing the game. So looking forward to that.
But the last we heard is, I think there was an update on April 4th that was saying that they were just received the final production copy, where they were just going to check everything over, make sure it's all okay. There's been no update since then, but I hope everything's okay, because then they will start delivery. So I think this one will pop up really soon, and I'm still really anticipating playing it. So that was my 5. Maggie's number 9, Through Ice and Snow.
My number 5 was a game called Maple Valley. So this one is one that I haven't had a chance to play yet. So again, it's one of those ones that it just the opportunity hasn't presented
For
itself.
no good reason.
For no good reason.
For no good reason.
It's just a ships in the night sort of situation. We don't actually have a copy of it, so, which makes it a little bit trickier. But I do, like, we have access to people that I think have it, so I could play a copy at some point. We need to find it.
This is a good reminder. Find Maple Valley.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of other stuff on our plate, so it's easy to, forgo things. But yeah, it's still really, really beautiful. I love the cozy world that Creature Comforts, which was its predecessor, had created. And one of the things that I'm still looking forward to in this one is that even though Creature Comforts was more about like dice worker placement, this is more about hand management and kind of resource management, is my understanding, which I actually enjoy more. See, again, that card thing, like going to the cards. So yeah, haven't played it. Still there, still anticipated. And that was my number 5, Maple Valley.
Now, my number 4 was an abstract game, a very abstract game called Qawale. Now, let's roll a tape. And Qawale is the next game in the abstract game collection, like Quarto.
Ah, yes.
You know,
you lost me already.
Yeah. Maggie's like, why haven't I heard of this game? Oh, that's why I haven't heard of this game.
Yes, that's your realm.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Maggie? You were not excited about this one at all. And what happened?
I loved this game. I loved it so much that I actually bought like copies of it to like gift to friends as like people that I know love. Actually, I'm like, I want to sit down and play this with you. So
yeah, so this made my list and not Maggie's list because I obviously, abstract games do not have a theme. Maggie doesn't tend to enjoy them. I really love them. Grew up on chess, and I really love in this Gigamic. Gigamic? I don't know how to say the name of the series. I just realized I see it in my mind, but I didn't know how to pronounce it. But Quarto is a game that I absolutely adore. I love that game. And when I saw that this was coming out, and it's like, I like the idea of it. I really like Mancala style movement. So you pick up all of the stones and you're moving around. Essentially, it's a fancy version of Connect 4 is what you're trying to do in the game. But for some reason, I just didn't love the game.
I just found it super satisfying. And the stones are so beautiful. I mean, like these productions tend to be pretty good. Like, it's got those sort of lovely wooden components, but the stone, like not the stone, the sort of the wooden stone shape is so shiny and so polished and so like
it has a Zen-like feel of the piles of stones.
That's what it's meant to.
So that's very pretty. But no, from a strategic gameplay, I'm also just really bad at it. I felt like Maggie was winning the whole time, but I also just didn't feel compelled to want to get better at it. So that's weird. So
that was a good, upside down world.
A good little flip. But that was my number 4, Qawale.
Now, my number 4 was the game Arborea, which I was mostly drawn to because of how beautifully saturated colors, how colorful it was, and also the theme is sort of like this sort of massive tree is what you see on the cover, but you're kind of guiding all these spirits of the forest, and it's about restoring the ecosystem so you can kind of bring back some of the creatures that have left because of the destruction that's sort of taken place. So I kind of really resonated with it. Plus, there was this sort of sense of it's going to be very Euro-y, lots of Euro-y kind of things, worker placement, and some of those, you put them on these tracks and they're kind of moving on, and the longer you leave them there, so you have to a little bit of that delay gratification. The longer you leave them, the more powerful when they step off the action they're going to be able to take. When we actually finally got to play this, I really, really loved it. So it's another one that really, I wouldn't say just met expectations. It was above my expectations because I love the colorfulness of it, which is both its ups and its downfall as well for a lot of people, because there's so much color-wise that a lot of people just really struggle and find it overwhelming.
And the iconography is quite small. But, this is a game that wasn't on my most anticipated. I really enjoyed this game. In the previous video, I spoke about, I think you called me impatient. And the fact that I might not enjoy the mechanic of waiting for your workers to come back to you. But unlike Sulkin, the Mayan calendar, and some other games of that ilk, I didn't find this one as bad because you can jump off at any time. You can remove your workers, you can wait and get better goodies or something that you're aiming for, or you just have the choice to jump off. And there's multiple tracks like that. So you've got a lot of workers and there's a lot going on at once, but I never felt like, oh, I've got nothing to do. Or I just need to wait now while everyone else plays. I still felt very engaged with what I was doing. So that wasn't a problem. But I was also a bit worried about the colourful board.
Yeah.
And I do find myself getting quite fatigued by the amount of graphic that's going on there. So it's not even that I don't, like, I love colour and I love the use of colour and the cute illustrations and everything. But yeah, for me, it's just like, it's tiring to look at it and it's tiring to like try to continuously work out what is the iconography versus like the rest of the board.
Yeah, what's decoration versus what's functional.
Yes, yeah. So that's unfortunate, I think, because actually the game is really cool.
Oh,
and
it's,
and it's thinky. Like, it's hard.
Yeah. I love it. I really like the artwork. I don't actually mind. I feel like it's a bigger issue when you're playing at the higher player counts, because it's then you're trying to straining to see the board and figure out some of those icons. But when you're playing at a smaller player count, I don't find that I mind that at all. In fact, I prefer for it to have all that colorfulness. I also love the positive kind of player interaction, I guess, in a way, of like the economies. I didn't even realize there was this whole thing of like, as you're developing kind of generating resources, you're getting rewarded for generating those resources, but then whatever you don't spend, other people can use. So it's like you're generating those resources and the resources are not wasted. People get to use them, but whatever you're not using, you're getting rewarded for having. So I love that. So yeah, like there's just lots of things in this game that really hit for me. So yeah, that was a good one. So that was my number 4, Arborea.
My number 3 was a game called Earth, a game that a lot of you would be familiar with, because the reason why it was my number 3 last year for most anticipated was because so many content creators were anticipating it, people were playing it, people were raving about it.
Truly hyped.
You got hyped. I got caught up in the hype, but
Swept
also I myself was like part of the campaign, like watching the campaign, really enjoying like what I was seeing. And I love the idea of it. Who doesn't like the idea of an engine building combo-tastic experience? As gamers, that is like catnip. We love that stuff. So I was excited by that. But as I mentioned in the video, I was worried about the level of interaction between players because I love player interaction.
Yes.
And that is 100% the case here. There is very little player interaction. And also on top of that, I do not like fiddly games. And I found this to be very fiddly. Yeah. So the combination of fiddly and low interaction, this game did not hit very well for me. But I also said something else in the video. So roll tape. Interesting, because I don't think this game is on your list.
No.
And it's a very high for me at number 3. And yet I suspect after playing it, it's going to reverse and you're going to be the one who loves it. And I'm going to be maybe just okay with it. And I'll tell you why.
I'm open.
Yeah. And how did that play out?
It wasn't. It was not a game for me. And I think partly was I liked the theme, but then the actual implementation with the gameplay feels very abstract. You're just kind of collecting all these things and the adjacencies, and there's so many different goals that are happening at the same time that you're trying to meet, and sometimes it feels like some things sort of are kind of competing with one another, and it was just too much, and I just couldn't kind of feel a satisfying thematic thread that kind of linked them all together. So it was just one of those that, like, as I was playing, I was like, okay, yeah, it's sort of, it's interesting, but it's not really for me.
Yeah, when we reviewed the game, we compared it, to something like Wingspan, where all the bird cards, they feel very thematic. And in this game, you don't really get a sense of the thematic overlay. There probably was some work in there to make it thematic in what you're producing and that type of thing, or what it costs. But because it's just a lot of resource exchange, like spending and building, and you never really get to spend that much time with the cards, if that makes sense. You're more focused on what color they are and which action activates them, and it's a lot more procedural. I would say. So anyway, that was my number 3, Earth.
My number 3 was a game called Arydia: The Paths We Dare Tread, which is also Amy's number 6. Was Amy's number 6, this game hasn't delivered yet, so we haven't obviously had a chance to play it. Still looking forward to it. It's another sort of big narrative. I remember the exchangeable heads. So for your
we were
minis.
saying we wish they were bobbleheads, but they probably won't be.
So
they definitely won't be.
They
don't
definitely
quote us on that.
Won't be. Or unless, you don't put them on properly, then I guess they'll wobble unintentionally. Anyways, but it's kind of like the sort of RPG light or kind of intro. I like the sort of the hexes that are kind of turning over as you're exploring the land. So I'm still looking forward to it, but hasn't delivered yet. So.
I'm looking forward to the save system. Now that we've been experiencing these bigger box games, I'm kind of getting a sense for, which ones do that well, so that you can pack it up and start again. And that's what I remember from the campaign, is they spent a lot of time talking about how the different player boards pack up, and so I'm intrigued.
Yeah, well, I know which one nailed it, which we may talk about later in terms of a saving system.
In a moment, spoiler alert. But apparently Arydia is fulfilling this year. They are anticipating it coming out US fall, which is spring here in Australia. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. But fingers crossed it will be in 2024.
So that was Arydia, my number 3, and Amy's number 6.
Now, my number 2 most anticipated of 2023 was a Splotter title called Horseless, Carriage. Now, as usual, no campaign or anything. You just had to pre-order this game, knowing nothing about it.
Hope for the best.
No rule book or anything. And if you watch the channel, you'll know that we both quite like Splotter games. The ones that work for us really do work for us. We love roads and boats. It's probably one of our favorite, which is going to be in direct opposition to what I'm about to say about Horseless Carriage, because Horseless Carriage is a game about the dawn of the automobile, and you are basically setting up shop, and you're going to set up a factory to develop and sell to waiting customers new cars. And you're doing this through the collection of all of these different tiles. And the way that they come together on your board, you're looking to try to create synergies so that different factories can leverage the same bits and pieces. That's essentially the game.
Yeah.
However, this game, it was firstly, it was very hard to get into this game, and this game setup is annoying. It is annoying. Splotter just do their own thing.
You got spluttered.
Yeah.
Just in the setup. Just even setting it up, you got spluttered. Yeah.
They chose not to have an insert. This is a game that has a million tiles, and it's very frustrating to set up and keep ordered. And normally I'm quite forgiving of that. And as I just said,
like
Roads and Boats is a ridiculous title.
Chaos.
It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. But it's so old that I kind of forgive the mess. Whereas these days, please be better. I just it frustrates me because it doesn't need to be hugely deluxeified, but there are some things that will really help it get to the table.
Arborea has a great cardboard insert that helps kind of set everything apart. It's very eco-friendly, and it just makes life and packing a lot easier.
Yeah. But on top of that, because there's just so many pieces as well, it's quite a fiddly game. So for me, it fell a little bit flat. It didn't get the same enjoyment that I do from other Splotter tiles in titles in trying to work it out. We really enjoy Bus. We still have Food Chain Magnate, even though it doesn't get to the table as often. We have Roads and Boats. So we enjoy these games. This one, I'll probably move on from the collection. How did you feel about it?
I didn't connect with it because it just felt very abstract. As I was playing it, I was I think partly it's the theme of the automobile, and you're trying to kind of get different parts, and then to create the cars that then you're going to be able to sell. And so it depends on where the customers are. You have all these overlapping little squares that then decide pricing and demand. And it was just I just did not. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't connect with it. But I know, again, it's another game that I know so many people have absolutely loved, and it just hits their table kind of all the time. Yeah. It was just not a
I definitely think I'd play it again, but I probably wouldn't want to be responsible for the setup, tear down, and teach of this one. So I will play it. If anyone out there wants to play it sometime, I would love to, but not one that we need to keep in our collection. So that was my number 2, Horseless Carriage.
My number 2 was the game Mythwind, which it's what I was referring to before as the game that has nailed the saving system. So this game is another sort of kind of open world narrative cozy game, which is what I was really, really looking forward to, where you are essentially kind of building or developing this town as you're discovering a little bit of story, because there's some magical sprites as well, and every single character plays completely asymmetrically, completely. One of them is a sort of polyomino tile puzzle style, the other one's a bag builder, the other one's more of you're going on journeys and adventures and collecting resources. So very, very different, and so you're learning every single one depending on which one you want to play, and you can kind of flip and sort of decide, I'm going to play one gaming session with one and then change over to the other. But the longer you stay with any one character, the more that character is going to develop, the more powerful it's going to get. And I really, really connected with that. So this is an interesting one where it like, did it meet my expectations? I feel like when it first delivered, I was so excited that the onboarding I quite enjoyed, even though there were a couple of tricky issues in terms of like, there wasn't a good player aid. I believe that's now been addressed. So with the like new printing of it and the sort of new kind of re-release, I don't even know the wording for when you relaunch or you have a new wave.
Second edition, I think.
That's it. But aside from that, I just really loved like starting to get into the world of it. We kind of hit a point where we're like, a lot of the buildings that you're developing, they sort of feel a little bit samey. But then I found that so we kind of played multiplayer for a bit, and then it just sort of became a solo
for a
game.
long time.
For quite a bit.
I was gonna say I played a lot of this game.
Yeah. But then when I sort of went to just playing solo, I realized that I was just it's a grind, but it's the kind of grind that I really enjoy. So like I would just spend hours and hours, and whenever I sort of see it in the like on the shelf, I'm like, no, I want to play it again. So I just really enjoy, like, it is truly like that cozy game setup where I'm like, okay, so maybe this game I'm gonna aim for that thing, and again, and there's gonna be new content added. So there's now the element that was missing for me, which would make it more like a Stardew Valley, is like those relationships that you create with the town folk and the villagers and stuff. And you don't, like, there wasn't any of that in the game, but now that's going to be added. And so that's cool. So that's additional content that is going to then expand. And so this was one that, it was an interesting journey with it. But now it did meet my expectations, and it's sitting now. It's grown to the point where it's like it's on my list. It's on my number 10 of solo games of all time. So yeah, it's earned its place, and I'm looking forward to more content that's going to be added.
Yeah, and I played a lot of this game. It wasn't on my most anticipated of last year, but I was actively following the campaign, and I was excited about the different mechanics of the different players. That was the most exciting part for me. I was a bit dubious, and the reason why it wasn't on my most anticipated was the promise of having no ending. I was like, I don't know how I feel about that.
I didn't really feel that, because there's so many, like you're going through a deck of events, and there's enough to kind of keep you going for the amount of time that most campaign games last anyways.
Yeah.
And then there's more content being added. So like it's sort of like, content-wise, there's still enough to kind of keep you going.
Yeah, there is a lot. And, and for me I played so many hours of this, and I played multiple characters. But for me, the payoff was never worth the grind. And this game actually created our new series, Agree to Disagree, because it really polarized Maggie and I, and it taught us a lot about our gaming preferences. Again, board games always teach us something about the way that we like to engage and have fun. Yeah. And we love analyzing that. That is why our channel is what it is. And this was a game that really pushed us to think about, why am I not enjoying this as much as Maggie? And I had to like really think about it. And Maggie's like, yeah, but we're getting somewhere. I'm building up my character. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not getting those immediate like payoffs.
There's no real the tension is very low.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you really need.
Yes. So the worker placement spots, there's no tension in that. You can basically do what you want. There's nothing really.
You do block each other. You can't.
Yeah, but there's so many spots that it's like, and you're working together anyway. Like, it's cooperative. So that's another element that, don't usually connect with. But it was the buildings as well that played into, like, even if I saw it as a pure narrative kind of experience, I felt like that the abstract nature of the town resources that you're working towards, to me, it felt just like levers that I was working hours and hours at pulling, and I didn't know why. And so the part that I did really enjoy were really the events and the adventures that you would go on. And so I just focused on that throughout the game, because I really liked that. I did like the writing in the game and the fact that there were all these little surprises. So I can,
and it's not a lot of text. It's not like even like it's Sleeping Gods, where it's like you've got spots where you're reading quite a lot. It's just like a little card, and then you're moving on, and then you're So that was my number 2, Mythwind.
And my number 1 was Last Light. And this was another one that I got to play it once with Roy, who taught it, the designer, Roy Canaday. And he taught us, and it was a group of 8 of us. And I couldn't believe I'm playing this 4X game with 8 people, and it lasted 57 minutes. Amazing.
Yeah.
And so since that moment, I was like hotly anticipating, finally got my hands on my copy. And I've really enjoyed teaching this to people. It is a game that's really easy to set up and start playing at a con, even for people who've never played a 4X game before. And I really like that about it. I have to say, it hasn't gotten to our table as much as I would have thought it would have, but that's because it's quite rare when we have a big group of people over for a game night, because we're gamers and we know that 3 and 4 players is usually the best player count, so no one gets any extended invitations.
Yeah.
But this is a game that I will keep, because I do think that if we had 6 people or 7 people, this would be one of the games that I would consider to bring out so that everybody can be actively involved. And because everything's simultaneous in this game, you're all taking an action card and playing it, it's very dynamic. There's always something going on, and the whole board in the center is moving, so you always feel like there's something going on. And I really adored that about this game. This game became my number 3 of the big box games of 2023 on my list. So you can see I really enjoy this game.
Great table presence too. Like whenever we've had it set up on like a gaming day or something, it just inevitably so many people stop by going, "What are you playing? Wow, that looks amazing."
Yeah, we do get the fancy planets.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
it is.
But even
really
if you don't have the fancy planets, like even just the base ones look really cool as well.
They do. It's
like,
the 3D nature of the solar system. It looks really good. But yeah, so that was my number 1 most anticipated last year, Last Light.
And my number 1 most anticipated was Earthborne Rangers. Now, this is a game that now I've had the chance to play. I even did a run through of it in Rado's channel, had final thoughts in there. And so, just to end on a bit of a wah-wah, this game didn't deliver. I think my expectations did not match what the game itself, the experience that the game offers. I'll tell you why. So again, it's a very well-loved game for some people, but other people kind of have the issues that I experience with it. One of them is I was coming into this going, it's this solar punk world. And again, it's like you have a lot of, it's so much content that you get to explore and experience. And I assumed that it would be like a cozy world because you're like this, it's like all very nature driven. And then, and very simple in terms of the components. Like it's very eco-friendly in terms of the way it was designed and produced. And it's mostly just cards and a few tokens, and that's it. So I was like, oh, this is great. But the actual learning curve for this was quite steep. And there's a lot, so it actually felt a lot more kind of clunky getting started. And yeah, you create your own deck and you have a lot of customization. But even in the way that it sort of walk you through doing that, I ended up creating a deck that I'm like, this is actually very difficult to get through anything, to get any progress. So I kind of had a bit of a broken deck to begin with. So I had to kind of go back and just use one of their pre-designed decks that they suggested to sort of get going, particularly because I was sort of playing it mostly solo. And then when the actual experience of playing the game is like, it's just so punishing. Like the world itself is just like, I found that I was constantly just wanting to just explore and do something, but the gameplay itself is very much about resolving kind of challenges. And you have like you sort of trying to commit certain number of a particular attribute, and then you reveal a modifier which then will make that attribute, like more or less successful kind of thing. And I really kind of struggle with that, because again, like as the world is constantly pushing back on you, and then when I would finally get to bits of story, the story itself wasn't that compelling. So no one character, even though there's all these kind of, I really like the artwork, I'll say, like on the cards and the characters themselves, the artwork is really cool. But then their actual storylines and even their quests just were never really satisfying or compelling for me. Yeah. And then, so when they finally happen, and I'm like, and then the rest of the time I'm like just like grinding away. And so I was just talking about like grind with Mythwind, which I really enjoyed, because it was just a sort of, it's a peaceful grind. This was a frustrating grind, which again, and so this is probably something similar that I had with like Arkham Horror, the card game, which is again a very similar system. I don't enjoy when a game is just constantly like punishing me and pushing back on me. And so I think people that resonate with that game are probably the type of people that would resonate with this one, because again, also thematically, the theme or the setting of this is a lot obviously more positive, and it's greener, and it's not like a horror type situation. And yet you're constantly encountering a lot of predators, and you're fighting with like, carnivorous type plants that are trying to attack you. And so it's like, I just want to chill in this world. Why would you let me just get from A to B? And then, and even
just try and deliver these cookies.
I just want to have this biscuit. Can I just move through these wilderness or through these, or get through the river without being like attacked? So I think that was that sort of was jarring for me as an experience.
So not a bad game, just a misalignment with what you were expecting.
Misalignment with what I was expecting versus the reality of it. So,
interesting.
Yeah, so it's a game that it's still in my collection, but I don't think it's going to stay in the collection because it was just, and again, not that it's a bad game, like a lot of people are really, really resonating with it, but I just did not connect with it. And also the writing itself, I didn't connect with the writing. I think if I were to kind of have to rank them, Sleeping Gods by far is the best writing for my taste. And then in terms of the like grind that I enjoy, Mythwind, and the best saving system by far, because Mythwind, oh my goodness, it's all these like trays that you just like stack one on top of the other, and you put the whole thing in the box, and it's just ready. I love that. But anyways,
I said something about playing Earthborne Rangers, so check that out.
And I kind of envision that I'll probably be playing most of these games solo anyways, all of them. Like,
no, I will give them a go. I will see, and then I might tap out if you're going to continue on the adventure.
Like after game one, it's like, that was enough for me.
I like that. And that is exactly what happened. I played it for a little bit with Maggie, and this game just wasn't a game for me, Earthborne Rangers, unfortunately. But, I could see what they were doing with the cards and the different layers and the way that you would interact with the different levels of cards. I thought that was really interesting. It just wasn't my style of game. But I would say overall, looking back at our most anticipated games of 2023, I think Maggie had a better hit rate than I did.
I was better at predicting the stuff that I would like. I feel like largely, and that we both sometimes enjoyed. But then there was also like stuff that I was like, I'm out on your list, and ended up being like
enjoying
absolute surprise for me.
I think that just tells you that you can never know if you're going to really, really love a game or connect with the game. And sometimes you can look at a collection of mechanics and just really not know how it's going to feel when it all comes together. So look, we hope you enjoyed this video. Did you enjoy this video? Let us know. If you didn't, we'll just stop making videos like this, but we'll stop reflecting and we'll just keep moving forward. But if you did, please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.